r/AskReddit by Reddify. What is the creepiest, most unexplained thing you have ever experienced? When I was around 5 years old, I woke up and saw a glowing white man-like silhouette pacing back and forth down the hallway, but kind of gliding. Freaked me the duck out, and I thought I was having a nightmare or something. I told my parents about it the next day, and my mom got a really weird look on her face. My brother had seen and told her about the exact same thing 2 weeks before, and I hadn't know about it. Still weirds me out. That was me. Sorry about that. Forgot my wallet. Don't forget his 20 bucks. My house sitting story. 2 months after my brother and his wife bought a new house, they had to go out of town and needed their cats fed. Their house and my office are both a good drive from my apartment, but only a few minutes away from each other. My brother said if I wanted, I could just stay over in the guest room rather than driving among the 3 places. So I got the keys and instructions. I was staying there 3 nights. On Wednesday. Monday evening was uneventful until about midnight. I was lying on the living room couch, watching Conan, with a cat lying on my chest. I started to drift off to sleep. The next thing I knew, I was standing in pitch black darkness. I completely freaked out. I had no idea where I was. I felt around in the dark and felt nothing. Finally I realized there actually was a faint blue light coming from above. I moved toward it and then understood where I was. I was in the ducking basement. The light was coming through the basement door at the top of the stairs, which leads to the kitchen. Just enough moonlight apparently made it through from a window elsewhere in the kitchen. I bolted up the stairs, turned on the kitchen light, and closed the basement door. I was terrified until I calmed down enough to come to the conclusion you probably already came to. I had sleepwalked all the way down the stairs after opening the basement door, which I know was closed. A couple things are important to the story. First, the basement. The house was very nice actually, more than they should have been able to afford. The only exception was the basement. I had only seen the basement once. When I first got the tour, it was totally unfinished and was the one major thing they wanted to fix up. All they had down there was some boxes and the washer/dryer. I had no reason to want to go down there and had kind of forgotten it existed. The other point is that sleepwalking is kind of a thing in my family. Almost an inside joke. My brother talked in his sleep constantly and would sleepwalk sometimes, and it always scared the hell out of me. The idea of people doing things in their sleep just creeps me out to the core. Still does. My brother knew this and would tease me about it. So it was known in my family that I had this phobia. But as far as I know, I had never, ever sleepwalked until that night. The image kept playing in my mind, over and over, of me, asleep, getting up from the couch, walking to the kitchen, opening the basement door, and shuffling down the stairs into total darkness. Creepy as all hell. Anyway, I saw the TV was still on in the living room, playing Wedding Crashers. I watched the rest of the movie, trying to laugh and think of the sleepwalking as a funny story to tell my brother. When I went upstairs to go to sleep in the guest room, I stayed asleep. That was night 1. The next morning, in the light of day, it didn't seem that scary. I texted my brother about it and joked around. All day I wasn't bothered one bit. But as I'm walking out of my office to my car, I'm overcome with this sense of dread. All of a sudden, the thought of going to sleep in that house and maybe sleepwalking again is scaring me. So I had a plan. I stop at the hardware store and pick up one of those rubber door stopper wedges. At the house, I jam this into the crack under the basement door and kick it in until it's as far as it can go. I test out trying to open the door, and it won't budge. Perfect. Later, I go upstairs and fall asleep. When I wake up, I swear to God I think I'm dreaming. I was standing in darkness again, but this time I know exactly where I am. The smell is the same. The concrete floor under my feet is the same. I look around for the light from upstairs, and it take me longer to find it because it's farther away. Last night I was only a couple of feet from the stairs. This night it was maybe 10 feet. I run up and turn on the kitchen lights. I see the rubber wedge on the floor, a couple of feet away, as if tossed there. Again, I can't stop picturing myself sleepwalking out of the bedroom, down the stairs, trying to open the basement door, bending down and yanking out the wedge, and then, again, slowly down into the darkness. I decided I was turning on the basement lights and they were staying on. I opened the door and flipped the switch to the basement stairway. I saw there was a main switch at the bottom of the stairs. To give you a quick sense of the layout, the staircase splits the basement into two parts. To the right is a small area with the washer/dryer, and to the left is the big open area. Anyway, I walked down and turned on the lights for the whole basement. That's when I noticed something I hadn't noticed when my brother gave me the tour. About 10-15 feet away, in the big area, there was a door to what looked like a small closet. This door was closed, but had no door knob, just an empty hole, so it looked like it would freely swing open. I realized it was very close to where I had just awoken. Then a ducking freaky thought came to me. It was as if each night I was heading to the door and getting a little farther each time before I woke up. As soon as that thought popped into my head, I booked it up the stairs again, left the lights on, and closed the door. I went up to the bedroom, but it took me forever to fall asleep. That was night 2. The next morning, Wednesday morning, I woke up late for work. I didn't think about the basement at all because I was scrambling to get ready. At work though, I was still curious about what was behind the door. So I texted my brother and asked. He replied, "Wait, why were you in the basement?" I realized that when I texted him the day before, I never actually told him where I woke up. So I tell him I woke up in the basement. Actually twice in a row. After a while, he sends this novel-length text about how the basement is creepy, not to go down there, etc. How they tried putting the litter boxes in the basement and the cats made a mess in the house because they refused to go down. How he volunteers to do every chore other than the laundry so he doesn't have to go down there. He says all this stuff, and it's surprising to me because my brother never believed in the paranormal or superstitions ever since we were kids. I also realize he never answered my question about the door, but I'll let it go. After work, I get the same feeling of dread as I'm walking to my car. I really don't want to stay there again, and I decide, duck it. I don't have to. So I go feed the cats, get my stuff, and drive back to my place. I'm supposed to feed the cats one more time, so I'll stop over in the morning. As I went to sleep at my apartment, I was thinking of all the steps I would have to take to sleepwalk to the basement again, find my car parked around the block, drive asleep to my brother's house, etc. But this time, I sleep through the night. That was night 3. Thursday morning, I stop at the house as planned. I'm about to leave when I remember that the basement lights are still on. I don't even hesitate to go down to turn them off. There was something about being there in the morning that, at the time, made it seem fine. When I go down, again that door without a door knob catches my eye. And it also doesn't seem scary anymore. So, what the hell? Let's see. I walk over to it, and I distinctly remember not feeling spooked at all. Until I reach my hand toward the door knob hole to pull it open. As soon as I do that, and I mean instantly, I feel this electric feeling, like the air before a storm. And I imagine a hand coming through that hole and grabbing mine. It was like 0 to 60. Going from no fear to being certain that something horrible would happen if I opened that door. It's hard to describe it other than that electric feeling. I booked it up the stairs and out of the house. So, a month later, I meet my brother for happy hour. A few drinks in, we start joking about me sleepwalking and the creepy basement. I say he never answered me about what's behind the door, and he says I don't want to know. Joking at first, but then insisting. Finally he tells me, and I don't believe him. He's my big brother and has only bullhitted me about 1,000,000 times in my life. This was his explanation. The previous and first owners of the house had a teen daughter that used the basement as her bedroom. The door was to her closet, where one night she curled up, took some pills and killed herself. The family was going to remodel the basement, but after tearing it apart realized they couldn't do it and had to move. That was why only the basement was unfinished. And why my brother was able to afford the place. The seller had to disclose a suicide happened in the residence. He said if I didn't believe him, to look up the market values of the identical houses in his tract. I know how much they paid for their house, and it was way lower. He and his wife considered themselves rational people and figured it was a bargain, but didn't want to tell anyone. After they moved in, his wife was fine with the basement, but he grew to hate it. He apologized for not saying anything to me before I stayed there, but he never thought I'd have any reason to go down there. Now here's what that convinced me. I said okay. The only thing that makes me kind of believe you is that the last morning I was there, I went over to the closet door, and at this point, I see my brother's face change and I continued. When I went to open it, the air felt like, and at the same instant, I say electricity and my brother says electric. At the same exact time, I saw his face and knew he was telling the truth. I've never stepped foot again in that basement, and I haven't sleepwalked since. TL, Doctor, house sitting alone at my brother's new house. Sleepwalked into the basement and possibly felt the presence of a ghost. That was a really good read. You tell a good story. Agreed. This story is actually one of my favorites in this thread. A twofer. Many years apart at the same apartment. Young teen me. I never had much of a rebellious side to me, but my parents didn't want me in their bathroom when they weren't home. They, however, had a fantastic shower. As compared to the leaky POS I was stuck with, we'd had a minor spat this particular morning, and they left to clear their heads. That meant it was time to use the fancy shower. Home Alone extravagances are set pretty low when you're poor. Anyway, they'd been gone about half an hour. Then I hear my dad stomp, run into their room. He slammed his keys down, checked the answering machine, and I knew he had to have been pissed, so I called out my shower drain was leaking again. Sorry, I'll be out in a minute. Stomp run to the bathroom door. Then it just stops. I called out to him, and he starts jiggling and turning the handle like crazy. The door wasn't locked, and he wasn't an invalid at all. So I stepped out, wrapped a towel around me, and began saying what the hell. As I opened the door, I opened it mid-shake, watching the knob turn, and there was no one on the other side. I ran through the apartment, saw that we still had a message, and the front door was still locked. Parents came home 2 hours later. The other one was a happy creepy about 10 years later. I had a cat I adopted that was a real bastard. He would hiss, butt, and claw if you were lucky, bite if you weren't. Or, if you weren't me, he loved me. He'd frequently attack my family members, then hide in my lap and go to sleep. He had a long battle against stomach cancer, and he finally passed. By the time he passed, it was just my mom and I left in the apartment, and she, in her own way, missed him. About 2 weeks go by and I'm up late one night on WoW. I saw my cat walk down the hallway, so I instinctively reached down to pick him up to my lap. Towards the end he could barely move his hips. Then I felt really incredibly sad knowing that clearly he wasn't there. That was enough to get me to log off for the night. A few seconds after I laid down, I felt a cat kneading right behind my back. I'm a side sleeper. I figured it was my brain messing with me due to tiredness. When I woke up, there was a little indentation on my blanket and a spot that was about 15 degrees hotter than the rest of my bed. I like to think it was him. He was a mean little bastard, but I hope he was happy with me. You have giant rats. Call an exterminator. Yeah, cat-sized rats. Not unheard of. Check out the WW1 stories. Those duckers got huge in the trenches. The soldiers would go to clear the dead from the no man's land when they could, if they could, or wherever, and noticed the bodies that had been out there for a while were white heavy. Well, the wool either ripped or the uniform split in some way, and these ducking rats that were the size of cats/small dogs would scatter. Bastards were eating the bodies and staying warm in the wools. Oh, and when they went into the trench lines they would charge the soldiers. The duckers had a taste for human flesh. They don't teach you that in school, but my great grandfather sure told me. Edit. Also, just go to New York City. Bound to see one at some point there. I used to work the opening shifts at McDonald's, So I would get up at 3:30 AM to get ready and get there on time. When I was in my kitchen having some cereal, I looked out the window to see headlights pointing straight into the kitchen window at me. It was on a cul-de-sac behind my house. No reason for anyone to be parked at that angle, especially that time in the morning. Whoever it was stayed there as long as I was in the kitchen with the lights on. As soon as I finished eating and turned the lights off to go get in my vehicle, the car watching me backed up and started driving around to my house. When I got in my car, this vehicle was driving past me incredibly slow, about 5 miles per hour. I have never been so afraid in my life. Probably a group of teenagers smoking weed in their parents' car. Realizing now, I probably scared the hit out of a lot of people in my high school days with headlights at 3 AM. Oh hit. That guy is on to us. Let's beat it, Scoob. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch together.